Season 2 of the Strange, Rare, and Peculiar podcast, a place to learn more about homeopathy, deepening your knowledge, expanding your universe of possibility in the world of health and well-being through homeopathy.
Homeo what?
Homeo what? Let's go. On the clock.
We are on the clock, and we're going, and it's good morning, and it's good afternoon, and
Oh, wait,
it's
you're
good
actually...
evening.
Oh, we started. Oh.
No, we haven't started. Yes, we have started.
Okay, well, I'm here. I'm ready.
I know. What are you wearing for crying out loud?
I knew you were going to ask.
Sheesh,
I made this
Louise.
hat. I made this hat some time ago, actually.
Did you make it for a teapot?
Thank you. It does look like a tea cozy, doesn't it?
Right now?
Yeah.
Yes.
I really like this hat, and it's the only one that was upstairs. I'm wearing a hat indoors because it's freezing. Because when you live in a house that is, well, okay, actually, let me
Built
just...
in 1850.
Well, here's the thing. Because today we're doing our research update.
Yeah, we are.
And I was thinking, as I was putting on this odd outfit to keep me warm in our 1850s house, I thought, oh, well, we're going to talk about research. And one of the things about research is sometimes you find out things that you don't want to know.
Oh.
Like our house wasn't built in 1843.
We thought it was.
Yeah, we were told it was built in 1843. Turns out it was built in 1850. But I used to like to say our house was built when Hahnemann was still alive. I can't say it anymore.
You can't.
I can't.
You
Because
could,
now I know.
someone that doesn't know a thing about homeopathy.
But then
they
why would they
generally
care? That would just be
Okay, right.
stupid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway,
So the...
have you ever found out anything that you really didn't want to know in doing research?
Doing research? Goodness.
It doesn't have to be homeopathy research, just curious.
Oh, I'm not ready for that. That's a really good question.
Isn't it? Because confirmation bias is a thing.
Oh my God. I mean, I think the thing that still gets me is Jose Iziaga's retrospective case series that conclusively showed that lycopodium
I knew you were going to say that.
4 to 8 p.m.
That modality.
ain't real.
It's not real.
Yeah.
But how many times does somebody tell you all I do between 4 and 8 is fart? Sorry, I really shouldn't have said that on a podcast.
Wow. Goodness, you are risque today.
It's the hat.
Folks, if you have no idea what we're talking about, it's a really, it's a piece of research which has many limitations because, one, it's just one author's clinical experience. But imagine that 5 people got 10 cured lycopodium cases and then scoured through those cured lycopodium cases to see which were the symptoms that led the prescriber to the prescription. And it would just be so interesting to see if 4 to 8 was amongst the symptoms that were present in the case.
So for clarification, there is a very strong modality, a modality being something that makes something better or worse. It could be a time of day when something is better or worse. It could be, like someone wakes up in the morning with a headache, or someone always feels worse with the full moon or something like that. Anyway, so the remedy lycopodium, which is, sort of a stalwart remedy in the homeopathic pharmacy, has, it's probably a certification exam question around the world.
It probably is,
GI modalities for lycopodium being between 4 and 8 p.m. And Jose Iziaga says, no, that's not true. But you know what? Since you told me that some years ago, I've kept an eye out for it. But I actually have seen that.
Uh-huh.
No, actually, but in one of the cases I didn't prescribe lycopodium. But that's irrelevant to
Right.
us.
But what it does is it is a beautiful segue to what we're talking about, which is to what degree or to what extent in our practices are we informed by modern scientific research as opposed to traditional research, or traditional evidence, which is, which dominates us because you were taught in your lecture by the charismatic person who stood up and taught you lycopodium. That's what you remember. That's therefore what you do. And we don't have a mechanism within our profession to really alter that.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine, I think it just really speaks to it. Imagine there's a really well-designed piece of research that says, no, actually what you've been taught, or this corner of it, is incorrect.
Well,
to what extent would that disseminate around the community?
No, it's impossible. And one of the reasons it's impossible is because we rely on books from 100 years ago or more.
Right.
So not just that we rely on the oral transmission of information from beloved teacher to attentive student, but we also are using materials, some of which have been outdated over time, so the plan for today, just to set our plan straight, so if you're thinking, do I want to listen to this or not, is meant to be about Home Foundation's research office, so a research update. And I'm really excited about that.
Yeah.
I think I want to maybe just start with a couple of things laying the groundwork, because what you're talking about is really compelling. He's about to slurp, people.
Well, it's hot, so I've got to get some oxygen and
Right.
some coolness into
So
this.
everyone knows it's not me. There he goes. I don't like it.
I did that deliberately for our friends out there.
Yeah, for all your friends. Jennifer, that's for you.
Shout out to Jennifer.
Anyway, so
I'm really sorry, Jennifer. I had to do it.
So this concept, though, of what it means to work in a profession where we are utilizing information from, 20, 40, 80, 100, 180 years ago, and to have that intersect with the digital age where most of us are using digital platforms where we've got these huge libraries where we are executing a search function to be led to pieces of information that may come from authors or sources for which there has been subsequent refutation or disprovement.
Right.
And sometimes it's just a matter of interpretation. So I'm going to give an example of something that I've been dealing with for the last 2 days, and that is one of the things that I've worked really hard on in the last, decade or so, has been attempting to really, truly understand what Hahnemann was getting at in chronic diseases, right? So for those not familiar, Hahnemann...
Didn't know. Is that what you've been doing?
You're just curious. You're just wondering, where'd she go? Yeah. For those unfamiliar, so, Hahnemann's philosophy book, The Organon of Medicine, also there has a companion piece called The Chronic Diseases, Their Peculiar Nature and Their Homeopathic Cure, the first of which was published in 1828. And there were subsequent publications and revisions to that, but it really presented quite a change. Subtle, but profound in the application of principles in homeopathy. Part of the problem with it is that it's a bit, I've realized, sort of coded in how it's disseminated. It's really super simple and clear, and not simple and clear all at the same time. But I think the biggest problem is that contemporary authors have made interpretations of it. And when I say contemporary, I mean sort of 20th century onward, have made interpretations of it that include things like a checklist of symptoms that would drive a person to a particular prescription. I'm trying to simplify. And so the other night, for example, in talking about, sort of how we take on information, I was teaching intro to miasm theory, intro to the miasms, to our second year part-time cohort. So our semester 2 is really, so much of it is about helping to, or attempting to bring light to this, complex subject. Okay. So in doing that, what's really interesting is that, students want secondary source materials. In other words, going to the original document. It takes a lot to really unpick that. And so we want pre-digested versions of it. And so students are always asking, what can we read about this? And we've made choices as to the secondary literature that we present to our students, but it's going to be taught in a slightly different way, or the information is going to come across in a slightly different way. And so one of the things that we've been going through is, subsequent to that class, helping students reconcile what I was teaching with what was in some of the secondary source materials, which can be really difficult. Now, I bring this up at the beginning before we get into sort of talking about all of our research, because one of the most important things that I think about is about confirmation bias, right?
Good.
And what we expect, and I think with confirmation bias, so in other words, you're basically reading something or conducting a study to basically agree with with what you want to believe. That's one way. So you're looking at me. Do you want to give a better definition for that?
Not at this stage. Keep going.
Okay. So, because I'm just being overly simplistic with it, but let's say that, going back to your lycopodium example, you've been taught something and you've got, a teacher that you loved and you learned homeopathy.
Yeah, you're kidding. Misha gave a kick-ass lycopodium lecture that I can repeat verbatim back to you.
And how are you ever going to go against, what do you do, right?
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes we even read things and we don't see something that is controversial to what we believe because we know that that's not right.
Well, that's confirmation bias there.
Yeah.
And so, it's an important thing. I think it is probably the thing which we do in homeopathy the most, of the questionable strategies we use to make decisions, that our confirmation bias usually comes out first, Do you remember? Yeah. That's a great way to start. I love it. So the way that if we just continue that thought for a moment, you were talking about, say, some differences of opinion in the secondary literature about miasms, about chronic disease.
That's to put it mildly.
You've got Ortega says this, you've got Demetriadis says this, you've got Chowdhury says this, you've got Henny Hoyden's mask that says that,
and then you get,
and they don't all agree.
Sure, and then you get Sankaran and post-Sankaran where...
Well, with using the word in a different way.
Exactly, using the word in a different way.
But, so in a normal state of affairs, if we had some more infrastructure, and I suppose the question was of interest to people, it would be very, very simple to design a study to test which of those ideas is actually true. We would need to ask a question. Develop a method by which we were going to answer the question, and then conduct the study with an open heart and an open mind, and not look for the types of information that would confirm our own biases. But we don't do it. But that's the sort of thing that the research office is absolutely committed to support and assist the practice of homeopathy, not just how does it work, or is it, does this combination remedy work with hay fever? That's what's gone on for the most part. That's low-hanging fruit in research and homeopathy, but it doesn't support our work, our daily work.
Right.
And that's what we want to do.
Totally.
So that's a nice segue. Shall I start talking about all of the things that we're doing?
Yeah, can I say one more little thing, which is I did something really bad.
What'd you do?
Well, no, it wasn't so much that I did something really bad, but I think I'm really glad we're doing this podcast because people don't really yet. Home Foundation and home research is not kind of a household word in homeopathy. And I was in a meeting a couple of weeks ago,
Not yet.
And someone was talking about research and going on about all the research that's being done in other parts of the world, and which was great. It's really important, all of that work, but said there's no research in America and we don't have a culture of research here. And what I did, because I was feeling my blood pressure go up, is I set a timer on my phone for 3 minutes to make sure.
Did you get Sicilian?
I didn't. I was really good, but apparently, because then this person said, I made you mad. And I feel really bad about it because he didn't actually make me mad. No, because if I get mad, everybody knows. And I don't get mad that often, which is really good. But I then went on to say, well, actually, there is research happening in the United States. And I went through and just, in about 3 minutes, tried to give a summation of the work that we do.
Yeah.
And there's a lot. Home research is doing a lot. But it was really striking to me that people really aren't familiar with what we do, even though in all the advocacy groups that I am a part of and I give updates on our work, it doesn't sink in. Like, it takes a long time for people to really get it, you know? Like, there is an established research network in the UK, mostly, you know, working with European researchers for the most part, and I guess South American as well. I mean, South African, all right, other parts of the world.
Of research in Brazil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the work here, with the exception of Jennifer Jacobs and her amazing work, I think it is fair when people say they don't really know much about what's happening. And we're only 8 years into this.
It's totally legit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even though I apparently sounded mad in a meeting as I was like, actually, there is research in America, I think that letting people know what we do is important.
So let's let people know what we're doing. Let's start with you. I believe that you have an announcement in relationship to the research that you have been working on.
Well, we talked about it last time.
Well, there's a certain book.
Yeah.
And a certain, I suppose, publication date.
And I think we did mention it in the last podcast.
Okay,
but
great.
My book, Contingent Evolution, Homeopathy, and 19th Century Biomedicine, should be printed by the end of October. Maybe even mid-October.
And it's history.
It is history.
But it's history that informs us today.
Absolutely.
Good.
And interesting, just because we were talking about confirmation bias before, when I presented to the committee at Johns Hopkins that I wanted to write my thesis on homeopathy, and this book is from that thesis, I was told, don't be that person.
Yeah.
And
you went, but I am that person.
I am that person. And I said, at what point does, the organization of information and research by, someone who's got decades of experience in a field, when is that not appropriate to do? But the assumption was that I would go looking for confirmation of my beliefs. And actually what happened, and probably why I wanted to start by asking you the question of, have you ever started to research something and then found an answer that you didn't want? I was surprised about my research, and it turned out to be the end product was not anything like I thought it would be. All of a sudden, Constantine Herring, previously known as my homeo hipster boyfriend of the 19th century, became a really complicated character in how homeopathy evolved.
And I was going to say split, but I don't mean split, but, created its various...
That exists to today. Look
Exactly.
at the class you taught last night on isopathy.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So, anyway.
Good. Well, in no particular order, I mean, we are, in the research office, engaged in no particular order, historical, educational, clinical, and practice-based or practitioner-generated research. And so one of the... I'll start with all of the things that are in my inbox at the moment. We have an article to be published in Homeopathy, so the peer-reviewed, the extremely intensely peer-reviewed journal on 5 COVID cases that are really, really interesting. Just 5 of a larger compendium of 55 of our complete database of 3,500. Now, so that's about to be published, and I've just got the proof to sign off on. So that's really exciting.
Very.
And if you're a subscriber to the journal Homeopathy, it will be open access. We're going to get a bill, by the way.
Okay.
So it's open access, and that means that the PDF, we don't have the copyright to it, but the PDF will be freely available for people to read.
I want to just go back to what you said, because I think, as you're starting to talk about all the projects in the research office, there's, while we have a number of different sort of categories that our research falls into, what has been important to us is that we really address seriously the limitations that have been put on homeopathy research in the past. So, for example, if you're doing clinical or outcomes-based research, the criticism is often that the sample size is too small, right?
Yep.
And so I think it's important what you said, that from, looking at these COVID cases, this isn't just, I had a really good case or there are 5 cases, but rather over the course of, several years or a handful of years, there were 3,500 cases for which we have all of the data with a vetted outcomes tool, from which a number of studies or a number of questions have been asked, and then papers have been written. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Now, let's just stay with the Homeopathy Help Network Clinic for a minute, because that's all of our acute work. So we've got an audit that we wrote, and our clinical audit, a formal, again, peer-reviewed clinical audit, is also ready to go. And that is a style of research where you're looking at the activity of a clinic or the activity of a outpatient service, and you're measuring what went on against standards. So that's different from, are we any good? Or at least it's answering the same question, but it's doing it from a different perspective.
And an important perspective.
Yeah. And so this one is not about the remedy phosphorus and how many times do we give it, that sort of thing, but it's about, are we safe?
Yep.
Against standards, measured against standards. We've demonstrated that we're safe, accessible, effective, efficient, and
cost-effective.
Appropriate.
And appropriate.
Yeah.
I like that.
So we're talking about the ways in which we refer from the clinic, the ways in which we are safe in the clinic, etc. So that one's almost ready to go.
Cool.
Additionally, we are now about to press the button.
Hold on one sec, because you said when the safety and appropriateness referring from the clinic. I think this is really critical because there is a culture in homeopathy now. There's sort of what I call the cowboy culture. It's like, we can do anything, Hell, I'll take out your spleen if you want me to, And I think that in terms of being able to communicate to a larger critical audience about homeopathy, we need to address the concerns that are out there, which is the inappropriate behavior, especially in a non-licensed profession, or when applied by non-licensed folks, or even when licensed folks are considered to be prescribing outside of the bounds of their licensure.
Yeah.
And so I think that question becomes really, really important.
Nice.
Preemptively dealing with some of the scrutiny.
Yeah.
You may proceed.
Thank you. So the next one is exciting because on the 1st of November, you, me, Christine, and Parker, and maybe Marguerite, are going to press the button and export. It's going to be around 4,500 cases from our database since March the 2020, March 20th, 2020.
The birth date of...
And that's going to be the complete database of completed cases, or at least, where we've been able to engage with clients.
From Homeopathy Help Now.
From Homeopathy Help Now. And then we are going to swim in that data because the data's collected, the data is not analysed. And so that's going to be not just COVID cases, that's going to be all acute cases. And we're going to begin writing on that data set.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're going to take a subset of that, which is all of our COVID cases. Probably, I'm going to say, probably about 2,700, maybe 2,900 of those are COVID adjacent or COVID right in the middle. And we're going to write about that. All right? Now, we've got our outcome measures, but we've also got how long were you ill before coming? How many remedies were used before this resolved? Of all of those cases, how many are resolved? Like totally better.
Yep.
How many were not? How many were partially resolved, etc. We've got a lot of different data points in that, and that's really super exciting because that's coming up. In the meantime, what you don't know yet is that you have got to begin the narrative, just the narrative.
It's so funny. I was just thinking about that.
On the journey.
As you said it.
Because that's, we don't have to be producing science, but we can write about this clinic and the journey to, now, or where we got to. So, the origins of it.
Right. So what Alastair's talking about is the story that goes along with the birth of the Homeopathy Help Now telehealth service, which is now the Homeopathy Help Network, which is a full acute care and chronic care service affiliated with the Academy of Homeopathy Education, but also with externs from other programs and practitioners from spotted all over the place. And so it's a bit of a compelling story because it was born out of necessity. It was born out of emergency, and there was just a moment where it became evident that in order to provide appropriate care during the pandemic, we needed organization, we needed infrastructure, we needed to start collecting data. It needed to be a meaningful effort, not just giving a remedy and hoping for the best, but actually calculating all of that information, collating all of that information, collaborating with people around the globe. And it was a I still have PTSD.
It's a journey. It's a huge journey.
It's a huge journey, but you're right. It needs to be written about.
Right. And I'm thinking, I just realized, I noticed that Nash just sent out their invitation for next year's journal. I mean, that could be perfect. Or the American Institute of Homeopaths journal for a journey like that. Moving away from our acute clinic into our chronic clinic at AHE, so a different clinical setting, still a teaching clinic.
Still a telehealth.
We have got, so also in my email is the back and forth that we're doing with, again, the same journal, Homeopathy, about the final touches on our MyCore measurement outcome results. And this is a case series that we've written from, and I think it's just covering 1 year of cases where we are showing, using pretty spectacular statistics, that we are doing really well. Even in our funny little student clinic, we're doing really, really well. Now, it's a case series, so in research language, you're not allowed to make a whole lot of assertions about the efficacy or effectiveness of homeopathy because you're not comparing it to anything. Sure. It's more of this is what we did. But we're doing that really well. And we've done the same thing with MyMop, because we used MyMop from 2017 to 2020.
Can you explain what MyMop and MyCore are for people
Measure
who don't know?
your own medical profile is MyMop. So it's a Likert scale validated outcome measure, which you collect at the end of each consultation. It takes 22 seconds. I've timed it. And it's not a hardship, my friends or students. And then we changed the measurement tool to MyCore, measure your concerns and well-being. Measurement tool in 2020, and the paper we've written is just for 1 year of that. Now, the third paper that we're writing at the moment, we are busy, is a combination of that. So, in other words, we're going to, at the end of 2023, press boom, go, and then we will measure 6 years. So that's 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 7 years of clinical data from our clinic. That will be about 360 to 400 cases.
Wow. So for context, the Academy of Homeopathy Education Teaching Clinic, we see, maybe between 50 and 75 new cases a year. That's the in-classroom clinic, also a telehealth clinic. We also, as a part of our affiliated clinical services, our students in supervision are seeing cases. And so there's direct one-to-one supervision that is a part of this sort of hierarchy of supervision that's a combination of Home Foundation and Academy of Homeopathy Education. And when you combine all of those cases, we see about between 500 and 600 chronic cases a year. So what Alastair is talking about, though, isn't the students in supervision. This is just the in-classroom cases.
Now, the thing about that, it's really exciting, is when you get up to a sample of 400, say, then you're going to find, usually, it depends on which system you use, but there's kind of 9 body systems, when you think about medicine, endocrine, digestive, respiratory, urinary. That means that we are likely to have 100 depression cases. We are going to have probably 120 musculoskeletal presentations. We're going to have a whole lot of people with poop problems, right? Digestive system. That means we can now do case series or targeted case series,
Right.
again, talking about our effectiveness. Again, they're case series, so we can't assert too much.
Right.
But what a case series does is it points people to future clinical trial research. Now, when we publish that, that means that the practitioner-generated research network will also be speaking loudly to our community, saying, "Send us your cases." So what that means is, imagine that we've got 100 cases from our own clinic, but now we can compare those to the 100 cases that come in from other practitioners in other parts of the country. Well, that's a control, and that means we can start asserting more loudly how we're doing, and homeopathy's effectiveness.
This is
Our value.
so important. So let's talk a little bit about this practitioner-generated research network, or PGRN.
Yeah.
It is something that we've needed for a long time, but I think now the profession is mature enough, the demand for homeopathy services is high enough that we can get the volume that we need of cases to be able to make this worthwhile. But here's the thing. When we think about research, clinical research in homeopathy, there have been a number of things that have thwarted study designs over the years. And I think we've cracked it in terms of how we're approaching this. So if you just think about homeopathy research, clinical research. So what we've done at Home Foundation is we've separated acute and chronic.
Yep.
Because they're very different in terms of expectations.
Yep.
We've created the infrastructure to be able to get in the information and to track the information, right? So we've got that infrastructure, and because it is because it's part of a research initiative, there's, it's a carrot and stick model. People are required to put in their data. But we had to figure out a way to get busy practitioners involved and to get people to make a culture change in what they do. So when you say it takes 22 seconds to do the outcome survey, that's really important. But then there was another idea that we had that we've talked about for a long time that we're finally able to implement, and that is when you focus research not on this remedy for that, it changes everything. Right? And so our idea that really now has come to fruition, that started with the pandemic, that started when we, started HHN in March of 2020, was the collection of public health and epidemiological and demographic data. So instead of saying pulsatilla for this, phosphorus for that, we're saying this many people come to the homeopath with these complaints, and this is what the outcome is. So we've allowed for individuality in the prescription, right? Also, because of what you've now put together with the PGRN and what Marguerite, who is our, what is her role? She's a methodologist.
She's a professor of
Yes.
method and research in two German universities, and she's also a homeopath.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's like a unicorn in our profession,
Oh
right?
my God.
And so what she has been able to help us to do is to create a coding frame so that we can get health inventory forms from any practitioner, regardless of whether they identify as a classical practitioner or a follower of this, way of doing homeopathy or this method. And what we can say is, these folks have come to the homeopath. This is the information we've been able to extract, consistency in the extraction of data. And these are the results because we're using the same outcomes measurement tool.
Now, a coding frame is an instrument. It's basically an instrument which takes a lemon and turns it into an apple, so that you can.
I've never heard it said that way. That's brilliant.
So you can compare apples and apples.
Yeah. Now there's the next goal would be to create, this is my dream.
Yeah.
Hopefully it'll come true, a universal health inventory form.
Right.
That then can be modified for individual practitioners, but creating a database that is built for research. So double de-identified in accordance with human subject research parameters. The clients can use it. They can put in their data. It's extracted for the purpose of research, and the practitioner has it for their need.
Exactly.
Right? That's phase 2. And if we can get that going, one of the easiest things is to get
Well, we've demonstrated it is going. At the end of the day, it's what we're doing at the moment is we're actually stress testing the coding frame,
Right.
which is it's been amazing. It's taken a year.
A year. It's a lot of work.
So in other words, I don't even know how to describe it, but basically, yeah, we've built an instrument, we've stress tested it, it is validated as a tool.
Yeah.
I think actually that's probably another paper, just the development of the instrument.
Gosh.
But it means that if you've got notwithstanding what Denise just said about everyone using the same intake form in homeopathy, which would be so sensible, but it means that if Dana Allman uses this form and Jennifer Jacobs uses that form and Denise Straiges uses this form, then they all become the same form once they've been put through the coding frame.
Right.
And that means so much to us.
Oh my gosh.
The amount of information on that is incredible. And so that's a project, that's a very specific task we've got. We will have finished the testing, finalised the frame by the end of October. And so that means we press go. Boom. That's another press go.
This one gets me so excited.
Yeah. So we are going to enter into this coding frame every chronic case.
Yep.
I mean, it's data entry, if anyone's interested. Iona, shout out to Iona if you're listening. But Iona will be at the heart of that. As well as Parker and myself, we've committed to, making sure that we've got a team of data entry folks. But and then we analyse that.
Yes.
And it is going to be great because, of course, what's inside a really good intake form? Are you taking any conventional medications?
How important is it for you to not take those medications?
Which ones?
What diagnoses do you have? What are your core symptoms? How old are you?
Do you drink tea?
Yeah.
How much? Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you experienced any changes recently in your life? What age are you? What weight are you? What's your BMI? Oh, BMI doesn't matter anymore. But, it is a wealth of information.
Oh, my gosh.
And goodness me, that is going to create for us lots of work.
Well, you know how I want to kind of bring us back to this thing about why is research important in homeopathy? Right? So we've got 230 years of clinical data showing that homeopathic remedies do miraculous things when applied appropriately to suffering individuals. And the medical establishment does not give a whit. And they still tell us that, we're crazy. Yeah. And so what we can do, as the second most widely used medicine in the world, yeah, we can gather that information. So what Home Foundation has taken on is this job of saying, look, people, we can come together to do this. Like, put all the differences aside about the pettiness of who practices how, and I don't want to talk to you, and say, you know what, for the good of homeopathy, this initiative, this work that is happening here has the potential to be groundbreaking for homeopathy if we all come together and participate, and it's not going to be that hard. It's not going to cost anybody any money, unless, of course, you want to give us money to help back it up, which would always, hit the donate button. And
this is where we have the ad for Athletic Greens.
I know. I keep saying, we'll need to get advertising, and the first thing that comes to my mind is Athletic Greens, because they're on every podcast that I listen to.
No, just donate to Home Foundation.
Yeah, but seriously, we operate on a shoestring. We operate on what might have been a retirement fund for Alastair and I is Home Foundation.
Yes.
That's okay, because y'all are going to take care of us in our dotage. Maybe that's how I should review our retirement strategies. Instead of trying to save money, we just keep putting it into the foundation and expect that people will take care of us in our dotage.
Hear that, folks?
Who are we going to go live with?
Has anyone got a RV parked at the back?
I love it. They can drive us around, or we can get an RV and we could go from homeopath to homeopath, and they'll just sort of help us along.
As a retirement strategy?
That's our retirement strategy.
I love it.
So now our retirement fund is just enough to buy an RV.
Okay, I'll do it tomorrow.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Anyway, ridiculous. But you see that this idea of research is really different in spirit than some of the let's prove mechanism of action research, which
Yep.
is important, and we need that in our back pocket. And I think that's going to do a lot as sort of the convergence of nanomedicine and homeopathy, kind of come together and coalesce at a certain point. But what we're trying to do is to create this space for actually gathering as much data as we can from people who are already doing this work. Yeah, we're creating the infrastructure and the team who can make this data really work for homeopathy. And this is where the PGRN is really critical, because this is a space for absolutely everyone in homeopathy to participate.
So therefore, go to homfoundation.org.
HOHM is how home is spelled. HOHM foundation.org. It'll be in the show notes.
Navigate to research.
Yep.
And then all you need to do is just put in, it's only 3 pieces of information we need from you. Name and your email for joining the PGRN.
That's right.
Now that's really important, because then at some point, it's not going to be November, but it's probably going to be February, we're going to get involved in our workforce study.
That's right.
Now, a workforce study, sometimes it's called different things, but a workforce study is, who are you? How are you engaged with the profession of homeopathy? How's it going? It's a survey. It'll take 10 minutes to fill out. Our good mates in New Zealand have just done a really good workforce study, and we're going to assist them in the publication of that.
I love it.
And we're going to be doing our own. The last one that was done, probably 2013. So we're going to be using similar questions to 2013, but brushed up a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then the next project after that, I'd say at the beginning of the springtime, is going to be a patient survey, a client survey.
Wow.
And
what's that going to look like? I don't know about this one.
The users of homeopathy.
Right.
It's going to involve a qualitative angle on it as well, but it's designed to gather patient satisfaction information.
Oh, okay, got
All
it.
right.
So it's not about what conditions are people arriving with, or will that be a part of it as well?
Well, it could be, but I think we might already have that data from
well, that's what I was going to say. That's a great thing from
patient satisfaction. What happened?
Right.
And giving, again, it'll involve some planning, coding frames, and the use of a model, probably grounded theory or one of the others. But that would be the second PGRN project.
I love it.
The workforce survey, the patient survey, and then the third one for the year, and that's in addition to the intake and people contributing to the intake study. The third one is going to be about how you're doing with technology, folks. And so it's going to be a bit of a revisit. Maybe it's a bit personal.
It's, your PhD was...
But I want to revisit how homeopaths are engaging with technologies, practice-enhancing technologies, mainly. And, that could be repertory software. But, of course, guess what? AI.
Totally.
And that leads us to the next big project. 6 different studies within a big project of artificial intelligence in homeopathy.
Yeah.
And this one, I might just leave it at that. Or do you want me to go into it? I'm aware of time, actually.
Yeah, it's a really big topic, but I think the one thing that I think is really important is just to differentiate between the AI initiatives meant to it's almost too big to... I almost don't even want to open that door. So I'm going to change it and say my dream project. You know what my dream project is to quantify the cost savings by condition between allopathic, institutionalized medicine, and homeopathy.
Well, that's a bit of a follow-up from our Mind Mop My Core studies, because if you are dealing with 100 depression cases, that's a legitimate sample,
Totally. But if we're looking at, for me, with the focus on autoimmune disease, complex autoimmune conditions, and looking at how many clients we are able to move from long-term dependency on immunosuppressive regimens to freedom from that. Yeah? Not universally, but it can happen, right?
Totally.
Going back to understanding chronic diseases, their peculiar nature and their homeopathic cure. But that is absolutely stunning if you think about what the numbers would be like to look at. And this is an example I've given before on the podcast. Someone, for example, who might be diagnosed with Crohn's disease when they're 10 years old, facing a lifetime of immunosuppressants. How could we calculate the cost of that over a lifetime? And then how can we look at it differently if we're able to actually help that problem?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, economic evaluations of healthcare are very skilled because you can do it in so many different ways.
Sure.
And I think that branch of medical research has become much more sophisticated in the last number of years.
Yeah.
And so, but you need a sample. And you need an agreed upon named condition, and autoimmune or sleep disorders or depression or ulcers all have, and there are ways to measure the public health impact of those things,
yep.
but also the individual, like how much is out of pocket for a person that's got an ulcer in the conventional world. Let's compare that to what went on
totally
in private homeopathy practice.
This is why you have a public health PhD and mine is going to be in history.
Yeah.
Because
okay, but you keep feeding me the ideas.
Well, because I have a list of fantasy PhDs. As we're wrapping up, do you have a fantasy PhD, or fantasy study that you would do?
I am totally interested in the drivers of technology adoption. That is I am really, my ears prick up and I get totally on. So
you would think that would be my interest, given that I am the techno obsessed.
Right. For me, that stuff gets me going.
Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe you could figure out how to help me with my Notion.
Well, it's about technology adoption. So it really sits nicely within my skill set, which is the way in which technologies or ideas flow through a population, and what makes an early adopter an early adopter. But you're not. You're an innovator. You're a super early adopter, and so you've got a different set of drivers.
And I love tech.
Most. Yeah.
Okay, my fantasy, whether it be fantasy PhD or fantasy study, whatever. And this is what I always thought I would do, a public health PhD, because I am so interested in doing a long-term study of the effects of suppression. I mean, in a way, I guess it's medical anthropology, sort of, this thing about acute and chronic disease and the long-term suppression of acute disease and the manifestation of chronic disease that comes from the suppression of,
It's a great question.
It's such a, it's so tough and it's so controversial.
Well, the thing is, no, it's not. I mean, that doesn't matter. There's no shortage of PhDs on controversial topics.
Right,
it's
true.
about the method by which you will then go about asking and answering that question.
Yeah.
And that's going to take you into all sorts of different corners.
But I'm not doing that one. Someone else has to do it. I'm not going there.
You can do knock out a couple of PhDs.
No, my research, now that I've gotten most of my other stuff done, can start my applications, because my research into the real origin of homeopathy, in other words, where did Hahnemann's influences come from? I've got the framework for that, and now I just need the time and the space to be able to go through and document the literal adoptions of information that informed Hahnemann's evolution of his theory over time, as it relates to the development of potency, right? The dynamization of medicines, going from mother tincture up through decimal to centesimal to the LM potencies, 50 millesimal potencies, and also the changes in operations for the making of the drug. So, aphorism 270, and also looking at the changes in trituration process over time.
Right.
That's
interesting,
my obsession.
because that's pharmacy, that's history.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That's why I'm using Obsidian. So tech people out there, if there's anyone is it Jackie Christensen who's a Someone told us they use obsidian. If anyone is an obsidian expert, please reach out to me. I'm using this platform as a way to make unusual connections and information, which is helping my research into alchemy and homeopathy by making connections between the different alchemical processes and the process of making remedies. So, but my coding skills are rudimentary at best.
Guess what?
What?
We haven't talked about silicosis.
Oh my gosh.
I know. My good friends, there's one other really important study that we're doing, and I've completed my first ever clinical trial application.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you, Christine. Christine Lukatek massively has assisted in that. We've got our ethics. And Tanya Cal is got her boots on the ground. Hi, Tanya. If you're out there.
If you don't know Tanya Cal, which I can't imagine if you're listening to this podcast and you don't know Tanya, but Tanya is the president of NASH, the North American Society of Homeopaths, and has been for a couple of terms now. Became a homeopath, started studying homeopathy, in late teens, early 20s. Like, this is her. She's the walking, breathing life of a homeopath. And she got it in her mind that she was going to do a clinical trial in Brazil.
And the named condition is silicosis, which is a drama in a specific town in a specific state in Brazil, and so we are going to conduct a clinical trial, and we are very close to beginning recruitment for that. And I spoke to her yesterday, and she said, "Oh yeah," and then let's do the same thing here. And I'm going, slow down, please slow down.
I mean, but I could do it in people who are cutting stone counters.
She was saying that in California
potters.
They're just about to ban polished concrete,
Yeah.
stone cut
For that reason.
countertops because of the appalling health effects, the industrial disease that it creates.
Look, as a potter, I mean,
Oh yeah, totally.
that is a big deal. Trimming pots when they're not wet enough, all of that dust. And I sit there. I've got my respirator mask, a heavy duty mask, and it hangs in my studio, and I don't put it on often enough when I'm working with dry stuff. I mean, it's a real thing.
So that, my friends, represents we're kind of hardcore about this. We've got our strategic plan.
Yeah.
We've got a very clear mission. We have below that a whole lot of short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals. They've all got numbers. They're all measured. And
We're organized.
You want to see my Gantt charts, honey?
Let's do that after.
Time to go. You make me giggle.
Yeah.
All right. That's it.
That's
Bit
it.
of research update from Hom Foundation. And
Seriously, go to our website. Go to HOHMfoundation.org.
no, don't do that because I've got some changes to make.
Right.
Give me
Updates
3
are coming.
days to update the changes.
Well, this probably won't. By the time this is live, maybe it will be done. And maybe we'll see lots of people at the AIH and Geary conference in Connecticut in March. Oh my gosh.
Don't go in March.
October. Don't go in March. I was thinking about the Home Foundation is sponsoring a research track at the Joint American Homeopathy Conference this spring for the 50th anniversary.
Yeah.
I think is it March or April?
April.
Anyway, so lots happening. We are really trying to create this culture of research in homeopathy in the United States from the student level onward. Actually, from the interested, from the level of a person who's interested in homeopathy through to students to professionals. Right?
Love it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
See you, folks.
Yeah.
Time to go. Ciao.
Back to work. Get back to work.
Get back to work.
Home Foundation Research Office is creating radical change in public health care. Home research brings awareness of the efficacy of homeopathy through practitioner-generated, practice-based, and outcomes-based homeopathy research with a focus on historical, clinical, and educational research outputs. Home Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. All donations are tax-deductible. Learn more at homefoundation.org. That's home, HOHM, foundation.org.